Trigger warning, this video will cover topics of harassment, touch on domestic. If these topics are triggering for you, please proceed with caution. I came across a piece of content saying that Blake Lively was suing Justin Baldoni for sexual harassment and retaliation, and then proceeded to find a New York Times article that broke the story, and then proceeded to read the 80-page lawsuit that Blake Lively filed. And I honestly just felt the need to talk about this with you, not because this is juicy celebrity gossip, but because of the way we were all manipulated. The bigger issue of misinformation, social media, what we think and why we think it is not actually what we think at all. This is a little bit different from my usual videos, but I've always wanted to add more thoughtful commentary content to my channel. I've made videos about the Marilyn Monroe film and the beauty community before, so I hope it's not too far of a jump if you've been a long-term subscriber. I did think about doing my makeup at the same time whilst filming this, but somehow that just didn't feel right. There are definitely more light-hearted beauty content coming soon, but I hope you'll indulge me, allow me to make some other content as well. Okay, so let's jump into this. If you haven't read the New York Times article, I highly recommend reading that. It will be linked in the description box. It is a pretty good summary of the lawsuit and the dark powers within Hollywood as a whole. The article focuses on the smear campaign against Blake Lively conducted by Justin Baldoni's PR management team and highlights some of the disturbing text message exchanges within that team. The piece was written by Megan Tohey, Mike McIntyre, and Julie Tate. Megan Tohey also wrote a landmark article that exposed Harvey Weinstein, which was instrumental in his eventual conviction. There is a movie called She Said about this, which I watched pretty recently, so I definitely respect her journalistic integrity. So the article is even more credible to me because of this. I also really recommend the film. I read the 80-page lawsuit, and the video will go through the alleged misconduct and harassment on set, the promotion of the film, and the smear campaign orchestrated by JB and his team. I will highlight some shocking excerpts from the lawsuit, including text messages within JB's team. I will also discuss what this means for society and the public as a whole. I will link the lawsuit document in the description box if you're interested. If you are watching this video, I'm assuming you already know what happened in the summer with regards to the It Ends With Us film and drama surrounding it. Blake Lively is now suing a long list of companies and people. Wayfarer Studios, which is the production company that produced the film, Justin Baldoni, James Heath, Steve Sorowitz, all three people have some sort of ownership or production ties with Wayfarer Studios or the film itself. Melissa Nathan, the head of the agency group PR who orchestrated the smear campaign as alleged by Blake Lively, Jennifer Abel, who is Justin Baldoni's publicist, Jed Wallace, another person that helped to orchestrate the public backlash. All of this is alleged by Blake Lively, and I want to say that so I don't get sued. My husband's first reaction when I told him that I wanted to make this video was, make sure you don't get sued. So Blake Lively is suing them for sexual harassment, retaliation regarding the smear campaign against her, and lots more. From reading the lawsuit, it was obvious they both cared very much about their public perception, and this makes sense as they're celebrities. They can only survive if there are people to lift them up, because if people dislike them, they would not go see their movies, they would not support their businesses. So for people who are saying that Blake Lively only did this to repair her image, yes, that is most likely part of the reason why she's doing it, but I can also see that she's doing it because she just wants to stand up for herself. It's also possible that she's doing this to raise awareness of general public and media manipulation as a whole, though I feel this may not be the main reason, but more of a bonus. The lawsuit starts with stating a meeting that occurred on January 4th, 2024, prior to resuming the filming of It Ends With Us. This was to address the misconduct and harassment on set, and concluded with all parties agreeing to a set of list of provisions in order to resume filming. The questions that came to my mind was, why? Where did this list come from? What went wrong to cause this list of provisions to be made in the first place? The lawsuit lists examples of misconduct to explain the motivation behind provisions. I will go through a few of the provisions, link it with other parts of the lawsuit, and refer back to some of the interview clips from the summer. One of the provisions is an intimacy coordinator must be present at all times. BL requested this because JB improvised physical intimacy that had not been rehearsed, choreographed, or discussed with Blake Lively. On another occasion, Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Lively were filming a slow dance scene for a montage in which no sound was recorded. Ms. Baldoni chose to let the camera roll and have them perform the scene, but did not act in character as Ryle. He spoke to Ms. Lively out of character as himself. At one point, he leaned forward and slowly dragged his lips from her ear and down to her neck as he said, "It smelled so good." None of this was remotely in character or based on any dialogue in the script, and nothing needed to be said because, again, there was no sound. Mr. Baldoni was caressing Mrs. Lively with his mouth in a way that had nothing to do with their roles. When Ms. Lively later objected to this behavior, Mr. Baldoni's response was, "I'm not even attracted to you." And I just want to point out there were a couple of typos in the lawsuit, because at one point they called Blake Lively Mr. Lively and Justin Baldoni Miss Baldoni. I feel like they probably should have caught that, but anyway, at this point, I just want to share a clip of Blake Lively in an interview talking about intimacy coordinator. Knowing what I know now, this feels completely different.
And Blake, you always have a vision. So talk to me about how sometimes you were even the intimacy coordinator in some of those sexier scenes. Like we saw you.
That shouldn't be happening, by the way. I just want to be clear that you should not be the intimacy coordinator. You should definitely hire intimacy coordinators, which we did have. Thank goodness.
You were teaching Justin how to pull you in.
Where have you seen
that.
this?
That
I
clip.
actually just saw it too. It was on Instagram yesterday, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, you know, romance is really important. You're supposed to
like the awkward laughter when she's talking about the intimacy coordinator, and when Colin Hoover talks about the clip where apparently Blake Lively was teaching Justin Baldoni how to act. This just feels so different now. And in the How to Fail podcast, Justin Baldoni discussed how it was difficult for him to shake off Ryle's character. And I guess if you really want to play devil's advocate, you can claim that Justin Baldoni was just in character and acting. But if you play a thief in a film, does that mean you can justify stealing because you were a method actor and in character? Well, both you and the character can go to jail in that case. But also, how do you explain what he did after the film had wrapped? Was he still in character then? More on that in later parts of the video. Another provision Blake Lively requested was all actors participating with Blake Lively in intimate scenes involving her being in any state of nudity or simulated nudity must be classified as active working actors, not friends of the directors or producers, and must be pre-approved by BL. Why did BL request this? How is this not even a given already? The lawsuit states, when the birth scene was filmed, the set was chaotic, crowded, and utterly lacking in standard industry protections for filming nude scenes, such as choreographing the scene with an intimacy coordinator, having a signed nudity rider, or simply turning off the monitors so the scene was not broadcast to all crew on set and their personal phones and iPad. Mr. Heath and Mr. Baldoni also failed to close the set, allowing non-essential crew to pass through, while Miss Lively was mostly nude with her legs spread wide in stirrups and only a small piece of fabric covering her genitalia. Among the non-essential persons present that day was Wayfarer co-chair Mr. Sourwitz, who flew in for one of his few set visits. Miss Lively was not provided with anything to cover herself between takes until after she had made multiple requests. BL became even more alarmed when JB introduced his best friend to play the role of the OBGYN, when ordinarily a small role of this nature would be filled by a local actor. Blake Lively felt that the selection of Justin Baldoni's friend for this intimate role, in which the actor's face and hands were in close proximity to her nearly nude genitalia for a birth scene, was both invasive and humiliating. So there's a random person who is not an actor, and they suddenly just turns up and gets to see Blake Lively half naked. How would you feel if you were in her situation? Provision. No more mention by Mr. Baldoni of him speaking to Blake Lively's father. Mr. Baldoni engaged in other behaviours that were shocking and emotionally distressing. For example, he claimed he could speak to the dead, and on several occasions told her that he had spoken to her dead father. It was off-putting and violative for Baldoni to claim a personal relationship with her recently deceased father. Having experienced grief myself, I would find this extremely distressing if I was in that situation. And I do find this accusation believable because of Justin Baldoni's religious background. He practices the Baha'i faith. They do believe that you can communicate with the dead through their souls. I will link an article below from the Baha'i faith stating something similar. If I was in that situation and someone was saying this to me about my dead relative, about how they can speak to them, I would be really emotionally distressed. More provisions. No more showing nude videos or images of women. I feel like that's a given, but no. On set, Mr. Heath approached Miss Lively and her assistant and started playing a video of a fully nude woman with her legs spread apart. Miss Lively thought he was showing her pornography and stopped him. Mr. Heath explained that the video was his wife giving birth. Miss Lively was alarmed and asked Mr. Heath if his wife knew he was sharing the video, to which he replied, "She isn't weird about this stuff." As if Miss Lively was weird for not welcoming it. The lawsuit outlines some more provisions and also more inappropriate behavior from JB, as well as poor set management. There is just so much that I can't talk about it all because the video would be 10 hours long. Some of the points I touched on were just icing on the cake, to be honest. Worse accusations exist in the document, and I'm not sure if I'm comfortable saying them out loud on the internet, and I also do not want to be demonetized. Essentially, JB overstepped boundaries, made inappropriate comments to other female cast members. BL wasn't the only one who filed a complaint against him, and on top of it all, the set did not have COVID protections. Both BL and her newborn contracted COVID. BL also had painful mastitis because she wasn't given breaks to breastfeed her child. I just can't with this. I find it so disturbing that Justin Baldoni has this Man Enough podcast and a public image of him being a wholesome family man, a man that stands up for feminist values, and then here it is in the lawsuit. It is alleged that he told the female cast members that her leather trousers looked sexy when she arrived on set. And when she rebuffed his comments, he didn't apologize, but brushed it off with, "I can say that because my wife is here today." Does that sound like a feminist to you? I don't see any reason for anyone to make this stuff up, and from personal experience, I will explain why later in the video. So, the marketing.
And It Ends With Us is in theaters now, so grab your friends, wear your florals, and head out to see it.
Blake Lively received a lot of backlash for the way she promoted the film. However, in Exhibit C in the lawsuit, in the marketing plan set out by Sony, who was in charge of distributing the film, they told the cast members to keep the promotion focusing on the positive, specifically what to avoid. Focus more on Lily's strength and resilience as opposed to describing the film as a story about domestic empowerment. Is not just about standing up to adversity, but also about having the power to overcome within oneself and grow from it, and developing agency to shape the future. Avoid talking about this film that makes it feel sad or heavy. It is a story of hope. The cast members didn't want to promote a film with Justin Baldoni because of his behavior on set. To twist his narrative, he started to promote the film differently. So then it seemed like he was choosing to promote a film by himself because he was promoting it with a focus on domestic. Again, this is all alleged, just in the lawsuit. This was completely against the marketing plan Sony had set out. Some of the things I have read from text messages in this lawsuit are absolutely shocking. They literally called it survivor content, and this is really just so demeaning for the real victims. JB even went as far as saying to his PR team that they need to be checking his DMs, checking the stories coming from real life survivors. He even wanted to publish these DMs. Again, all alleged. I took the Ends With Us situation with a grain of salt back in the summer and didn't get on the Blake Lively hate train. I wasn't 100% convinced that Blake Lively was the villain. Because how can it be that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds were so powerful that they were able to influence all of the cast and Colleen Hoover to unfollow JB on Instagram? That didn't make sense to me. However, I was convinced that the way the film was promoted was inappropriate and tone deaf. I did watch a video from Film Cooper who commented on how that Kjersti Flaa video came out about Blake Lively at just the right time, and how a positive video about Johnny Depp also came out during the Depp versus Her trial by Kjersti Flaa. And of course, as you know already, it's the same PR team, Melissa Nathan, that represented Johnny Depp and Justin Baldoni. It did seem too much like a coincidence. Kjersti Flaa has responded to the accusations. I will touch upon this later in the video. The PR management from Justin Baldoni's side was led by a strategy called astroturfing. This is a practice of publishing opinions or comments on the internet in the media that appeared to come from ordinary members of the public, but actually come from a particular company or political group. The lawsuit alleged that if Blake Lively were going to make her grievances public, Justin Baldoni and Wayfarer Production were going to get ahead of this and paint Blake Lively in a negative light instead. The PR agency said, "Our recommendation is to get ahead of this narrative by owning any misconceptions and addressing them head on. Ultimately, we need to be ready to take the air out of any story that does arise, as well as commentary and or background narrative BL and her team put together without being the louder antagonizer." There are so many scenarios that they have outlined and how they would retaliate against the star. The lawsuit highlights how JB has positioned himself as a feminist brand. Therefore, he needed to do everything to protect this brand, and that included putting BL in a negative light to retaliate against the HR complaints she had filed. Before the drama started, I actually noticed Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni were never seen together promoting the film. The PR agency said that this was a move from BL's team as an Easter egg to alert the viewers that something fishy is going on in the background. Justin Baldoni sent a group text to Miss Abel, who is his publicist, and Mr. Heath, that he wasn't in love with the document they had presented, which is Exhibit D, and he says he didn't feel the protection. He also expressed that he felt like BL will tell her side of the story about the misconduct that happened on set. He felt that the PR agency also thought BL was going to do something, and this was all a little bit too concerning, and it was what everyone thought she would do as well. I am putting my own interpretation on these text messages a little bit because the text messages are very badly punctuated, so it's a little bit difficult to make sense of them sometimes. So I will say some of this is what I'm putting together and not necessarily exactly from the lawsuit, but you can see on the screen these are the texts that he sent. And what it's really damning is Jennifer Abel saying that Justin Baldoni wants to feel like Blake Lively can be buried. And Melissa Nathan, the head of the PR campaign, says we cannot write that down, because if they wrote down those explicit things in a document and that document ends up in the wrong hands, that will be game over. How ironic that this is exactly what has happened. But she does say we can bury anyone anyway in a text message. JB even sends a screenshot of a tweet about an article on Hailey Bieber. The headline reads, "Hailey Bieber's history of bullying many women, not just Selena Gomez, throughout the years." And he says, this is what we would need. I suspect this is him saying this is what they would need to bring down Blake Lively. On top of hiring Melissa Nathan, they also hired someone called Jed Wallace, who weaponized a digital army to create and promote content that appeared to be authentic on social media platforms and internet chat forums. And then these pieces from social media platforms will be going to reporters, making the content go viral to influence public opinion. Again, alleged from the lawsuit. I don't want to get sued. All of these text exchanges are honestly quite sickening. Melissa Nathan writes to Jennifer Abel, "The majority of socials are so pro-Justin and I don't even agree with half of them. LOL. The lawsuit also contained more details of how Melissa Nathan influenced tabloids like the Daily Mail from her personal connections. She was able to suppress negative press about Justin Baldoni through her personal connections. Her sister Sarah Nathan is a journalist on New York Post and contributor at Page 6, and she got her sister to remove JB's religious background and the term misogynistic from the news article. JB's PR team celebrated the success. A really obnoxious text or email from Jed Wallace said, "We are crushing it on Reddit." That honestly made me want to puke. I guess Melissa Nathan does have some kind of insight, because at one point she does say, "It's actually sad because it just shows you some people really want to hate on women." I just want to read this excerpt out loud. On August 9, 2024, Ms. Abel circulated a screenshot of a post by a woman stating, "Justin, the creator of a show called My Last Days, exploits the struggles of individuals facing terminal illness for his own gain. He found my friend who is battling a serious illness and followed her life closely. Despite her grace in not speaking ill of him, I sensed from the start that something was deeply wrong. Justin weaponizes therapeutic language, presenting himself as thoughtful and supportive, yet his actions reveal a very different reality. He portrays himself as an ally to women and vulnerable, but is all a facade. He manipulates the vernacular of care to mask his true intentions. In reality, none of the proceeds from the show benefited the individuals he profiled. He even had the audacity to depict her hometown, a vibrant and affluent community, as a small, impoverished town. His portrayal was not just inaccurate, but insulting. Once the show aired, Justin took his profits and vanished, leaving nothing but a sense of exploitation in his wake. His behavior was not just tacky and gross, it was a betrayal of the very people he claimed to uplift. And in a response to the article, Ms. Abel stated, "I'm assuming this is not true in the slightest, ... Either way, we've flagged it to Jed and his team for more serious action on the social side." The AstroTurf thing was extremely successful. I was also manipulated. I thought Blake Lively's promotion was tone deaf. Also, I sided with Johnny Depp during that Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. I watched the trial on YouTube and found Amber Heard hard to believe. Now, a couple of years later have gone by and I've read more articles about the concept of an imperfect victim, and knowing things about Johnny Depp's PR company now, I can't help but think how I was manipulated at the time. However, even knowing this, I still find it difficult to completely side with Amber Heard and believe her. And I think this is how powerful the media can be. So if you've been a hard stand for Justin Baldoni and hated Blake Lively, I can imagine it'd be difficult to accept this new information and still think that Blake Lively is simply doing damage control. The lawsuit goes into a bit more detail about BL's damaged reputation. They included some charts about the positive and negative mentions of Blake Lively. You can see that starting from the beginning of August in 2024, there was so many negative mentions of Blake Lively. They also argue that BL's business suffered because of this. As we all remember, she launched a hair care brand at the time, and this added to the perception that she was tone deaf because she was promoting a hair product whilst promoting a film about domestic. But we do know there were some changes with the hair care line release, and the film was actually pushed back later, so the two weren't meant to happen together, and unfortunately they did. Apparently, Blake Lively backed out the scheduled role to host the premiere episode of 50th anniversary season of Saturday Night Live in September 2024. Instead, it was hosted by Jake Gyllenhaal. Now, I just want to read out the last few bits from the lawsuit. The emotional impact on Ms. Lively has been extreme, not only affecting her, but her family, including her husband and her 4 children. There are days when she has struggled to get out of bed, and she frequently chooses not to venture outside in public. While she has fought to maintain her personal life and business interests, behind closed doors, she has suffered from grief, fear, trauma, and extreme anxiety. She also has been experiencing repeated and painful physical symptoms as a result of this experience. Mr. Reynolds, too, has been affected mentally, physically, and professionally by his wife and children's pain. Worst of all, however, has been the impact on their young children, who have been traumatized and emotionally uprooted in ways that have substantially impacted their well-being. These are but a few examples of this substantial harm caused by this malicious campaign, which pervaded and continues to pervade all aspects of Miss Lively's life. Miss Lively never sought out conflict with Wayfarer, Mr. Baldoni, or Mr. Heath, but instead consistently attempted to speak up for a safe and respectful workplace privately in the hopes of protecting herself as well as the cast and crew without jeopardizing a film that she believed could make a difference in people's lives. In response, Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, and those working for them sought to destroy Miss Lively and anyone else who knew the truth. Miss Lively's discovery of the full extent of the retaliatory campaign launched by the Wayfarer parties has left her with no choice. Through this complaint, Miss Lively seeks to set the record straight, to hold the Wayfarer parties and associates accountable, and to shine a light on this new form of retaliation so that it will not be used against any others who seek to stand up and speak out against sexual harassment. All of the people involved will never know who they truly are. However, I don't see any reason for Blake Lively to make up any of this stuff. And the instances are so specific and detailed that I find it hard to believe that they are lies. Also, there are other cast members who have witnessed this or experienced this. Staff and crew have witnessed it. So if she was lying, those lies would have been easily debunked. There was another cast member that filed complaint against Justin Baldoni, according to the lawsuit. In terms of what she is like as a person, she's certainly not a perfect human being, but none of us are perfect. There are video clips of her demonstrating mean girl behavior. However, the perfect victim does not exist. She could be rude and unpleasant, but also be abused. We all have a picture of a perfectly docile, quietly spoken person, and we think only those type of people can be victims, but that's simply not true. However, I am also aware of the possible irony that I could be a pawn in Blake Lively's PR team right now and not know it. I experienced something similar, but on the way less serious scale recently at work. I was spoken to in a way that was completely inappropriate and left me in tears. I was also gaslit into thinking I was the one that caused the problem. And it was not the first time I had experienced something so unpleasant with this member of staff. I chose not to speak up previously, but I decided to do so this time. And honestly, it was really difficult decision to make. And I know how you think it's so simple, you know, you just stand up for yourself. And I do that all the time. But my thought was, I don't want to cause trouble. I'm not in a position of power. I didn't want to raise a concern that people think that I was difficult to work with. However, I knew that staff member wasn't just unpleasant towards me. Other people also had problems with him. And I thought I wanted to speak up, not only for myself, but for other people. The easier thing, honestly, was to just let it go and bury it and move on and forget. The problem with doing that is the bad behavior carries on because there is never any consequence. And what I learned was that there are honestly so many more possible negative consequences for someone who does speak out versus the positive consequences. It was not an easy decision for me to raise a complaint at work, and my thing wasn't near as serious as sexual harassment. And I know I would have found it so much more difficult to speak up for something that serious. So from my personal experience, that's why I now believe women even more firmly when they speak out against abuse. So Kjersti Flaa claimed that she posted a video after seeing the movie. She says she didn't know any of the drama surrounding Blake Lively, despite the fact that she was a journalist. She said she's been on holiday in Europe. The video was posted on 10th of August. Release date for the UK and US was 9th of August. 7th for Sweden, Iceland, later on for Germany and France. So it was a pretty quick turnaround of her finding that decade-old clip and posting it to YouTube. She said she read bits of the lawsuit, but she still criticized Blake Lively for her tone-deaf interviews. I thought that the promotion was tone-deaf at the time, certainly for sure. It is still tone-deaf. But Kjersti must have missed a part in the lawsuit where the cast was told to promote the film in a light-hearted way. She argued that JB doesn't come out of it very well if the lawsuit is true, but she also criticized Blake Lively for not bringing the lawsuit earlier.
Then again, I find it interesting that Blake Lively waited this long to file this lawsuit or to file this complaint against him, because why didn't you do it earlier?
And I really dislike that comment, because it's the same tone as saying to an abuse victim, why didn't you leave earlier if it was so bad? I don't know if Kjersti Flaa was a plant by Jed Wallace or Melissa Nathan. I don't know her personally. I can only say what I felt watching her response, and her comment about Blake Lively not coming out with his lawsuit sooner. Honestly, that did it for me. I get that this is a first world feminist problem. We aren't talking about how women are so unequally treated in other parts of the world. Yes, this lawsuit is definitely two Hollywood celebrities battling it out, both wanting to protect their reputation and their brand. Neither of them are raising awareness about DV now. The scariest thing that came out of this lawsuit was how easily we can be manipulated by the media. Also, on a lighter note, I can never watch Jane the Virgin again, which is really sad because I love that show. But anyway, the scariest thing is the power of media in our society in the current climate. When one story picks up traction, 10 people make a video or post about it, and then 100 other people make that same video amplifying that message, whether that message is planted, fake, or true. No one knows anymore. The spread of misinformation is massive. This type of misinformation about celebrities' reputation is absolutely frivolous and unimportant in the scale of things. However, imagine the same thing happening to politics, world leaders, and climate change. And that's not a small issue anymore. The documentary called The Social Dilemma on Netflix is worth a watch if you want to dive deeper into this topic. Traditional media and social media have a responsibility on the discourse they create, and this whole incident shows that they are so easily influenced by planted stories. It's irresponsible journalism, and I get that. Your average TikToker is not going to do background research on whether Blake Lively did this or Justin Baldoni did this, right? They don't care. They do not have the same standard as a traditional journalist. I read an article about media influence and public opinion, and I just want to quote this journalist. What we choose to cover or not cover has real consequences. It's not just about reporting the news, it's about shaping public opinion and by extension societal values. Honestly, at this point, I don't know what's real and what's not anymore. Not just about celebrities, but everything. I am going to question more and more what I see on the news and online, and I hope you do too.